So it's been about 4 months since I last uploaded a video onto the Ironworker Gaming channel, largely due to the fact that Destiny 2, the game that I built this channel around, just isn't doing it for me right now. And it's kind of been a blessing and a curse. Obviously, it's not an ideal situation if you're considering the overall health of this channel, but I got to do something that I rarely got to do over the past few years. That being, play other games. And I did want to share some thoughts on a game that I recently picked up, Like a Dragon Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii, releasing on February 20th. I remember seeing the trailer for this game a few months back, and it definitely grabbed my attention. A pirate adventure game featuring a Yakuza member moonlighting as Jack Sparrow in modern-day Hawaii was a pretty wild concept in its own right, but all the other silly, goofy, off-the-wall stuff that they showcased in that trailer as well put this game pretty high up on my must-try list. And after taking about 30 hours to finish off the main campaign, and a good chunk of the side content, I can say that I'm walking away happy with the experience that I had. And before I get into my thoughts, I just wanted to preface them by saying this is my first go-round with a Yakuza title. I'm well aware of the existence of the franchise, but my knowledge of any previous games is just limited to things I picked up in conversation, videos, or trailers. So any reoccurring systems, features, returning characters, ongoing story arcs, they are all lost on me. These are the thoughts of someone who is casting their gaze on the franchise for the very first time. That being said, I am playing this game on PC via Steam, and it does run very well. I'm still using a modest 2060 Super graphics card. Graphical settings were on high, I was running at 1440p, 60 frames per second, and everything was smooth as can be. No micro stutters, no noticeable frame drops, even in open areas when there was a lot going on screen. And while it might not be the most graphically intensive game out there, I have no complaints on the performance end, even with a pretty dated video card. Also, I didn't experience any bugs, glitches, errors, crashes, or general wonkiness. And while a game actually working properly probably shouldn't be a selling point, in this day and age, given the state that some games release in, it does score some points with me. For the game's narrative, while trying to steer clear of spoilers because it is a more recent release, this game does feature a proper pirate adventure. The modern day setting obviously puts a little bit of a twist on things, but it is a pirate story through and through. And while I do feel like things move maybe a bit too slow early on for my taste, while you're still being introduced to the game, the action and intrigue does escalate as the world begins to open up. And overall, the story being told is pretty interesting. It's not nearly as surface level as I thought it was going to be when I was first getting going. That's not to say I was right on the edge of my seat for the entire playthrough, but the narrative was good enough to keep me invested, and there were some interesting twists and turns along the way. But everything does have that, and I don't know any other way to say it, but that very Japanese game show feel to it. Everything's a little over the top. Some things are way over the top. Characters' personality traits are a bit exaggerated. You have villains who are more than willing to take as long as they need to unveil their master plan before you actually fight. A lot of grandstanding, a lot of melodramatic interactions with NPCs, but it all fits in perfectly with the overall tone of this game. It's generally lighthearted, it's whimsical, it doesn't take itself too seriously. It all just kinda worked for me when you put the pieces together. It is an on-rails adventure though. The main story's path is set in stone. You're not presented with any meaningful choices or decisions that can alter it in any way. There are plenty of side plots and side objectives that you will be able to tackle at your own leisure, but nothing that's going to alter the main plot in any serious way. For the gameplay, at its core, I would say Pirate Yakuza is a third-person beat-em-up. Hand-to-hand combat is definitely front and center, and while it's not extremely in-depth or complicated, there is a bit of a skill element to it. I mean, we're not playing a Souls-like here, but you do have two different fighting styles that you can swap on and off of. Each have their own specific movesets and combos that can be blended together, with additional attacks, abilities, and stat upgrades that will be unlocked over time. But the combat is fast-paced, it does flow pretty seamlessly, and in my opinion, was quite satisfying, whether you're just roughing up some bums on the street, or going toe-to-toe with a boss-tier enemy. And Pirate Yakuza definitely wants to keep you in the action. Just going from point A to point B, you could probably pick a fight every 15 seconds if you were so inclined. And after almost every interaction, every conversation, or every cutscene, things almost always seem to evolve into, okay, now we're going to fight. The few situations where that was not the case, honestly, caught me off guard. So if beating bad guys' faces in just for the fun of it sounds like your thing, Pirate Yakuza serves up that opportunity every chance that it gets. And it wouldn't be a proper pirate game if there wasn't some sort of naval aspect to it. You will be captaining your own pirate ship. You can upgrade the vessel, swap out its weapons, You'll be recruiting NPCs to crew your ship along the way, and you'll be able to tinker around with a good bit of visual customization options. And that last point kind of stretches into the entirety of the game. There are tons of opportunities to cosmetically tune things to your liking, but I digress. The naval combat itself is pretty rudimentary. You have your forward-facing machine guns and your port and starboard cannons. Most of the enemy ships that you're going to encounter out in the open areas are cannon fodder. They go down pretty quick. As you increase your rank in a game mode called the Pirate Coliseum though, or when you start hunting down rogue pirates in open water, you will have to start paying a little bit more attention to what you're doing. I would never say that it's hard, provided that your ship is upgraded to the level of the encounter, but enemy boats will have more health and have access to additional attacks other than just firing their broadside cannons. In these more meaningful encounters, once you deplete the enemy boat's health, you will be boarding it. You and any crew members that you have assigned to a boarding party will hop onto the enemy's boat and go toe-to-toe with the bad guys, which circles back around to the melee combat. So, in line with the rest of the game, it does seem like they took the more arcadey approach with the sailing and naval combat, which I think is fine. It does serve its purpose, it adds more substance to the game, and given how the rest of the game is structured, I think it might have felt a little odd if there was a hyper-realistic sailing simulator shoehorned in here. And just a few more random thoughts and notes that I have listed here to give you a sense of what you could expect from this game if you're thinking about a purchase. The game is not set in an open world per se, it's more a collection of maps. You're not going to be hopping on your boat, sailing across the ocean to another location, docking it and hopping off seamlessly. Moving from one region to another, especially after you get some of these areas unlocked, is basically going to be done via the menus. Now, the city of Honolulu is probably big enough to be considered an open world area. There's plenty to see and plenty to do there, but still it's not physically connected to the other regions of the game. Next, minigames. If you like minigames, there are a lot of them featured in Pirate Yakuza. Darts, billiards, golf, arcade games, the claw machine. There are a bunch of them stuffed in here, and while it's not something I personally get too excited about, some of them I did think were pretty entertaining, and if they're not your cup of tea, they're easy enough to ignore. Another thing that I'm kind of sensitive to that I thought they did a nice job on in this game is the NPC character models. I can't help but roll my eyes in games when I see all these people walking around, arms and legs stiff as a board like robots, or seeing the same character model like 18 times when you walk down the road half a block. It's kind of immersion breaking for me, but it does feel like everyone's moving around pretty naturally for the most part. And there's enough NPC diversity that I don't get the feeling of deja vu every 3 seconds. It might not be something that you get hung up on, but I do appreciate the attention to detail in that respect. Also, I thought the voice actors for the main characters in this story did a very good job. They delivered their lines, played their character, and conveyed emotion in a very natural sounding manner. There were a couple cringy moments, but I think that more boiled down to what was being said, rather than how it was being said. There are a couple of minor issues that I do have with Pirate Yakuza though. You'll have a lot of interactions with NPCs that are text-based. Inherently, I have no real problem with that, but some of them are very long-winded. There were side quests in this game that were quite interesting. Others, I could not pull myself to care about. In those situations, I was worried I was going to wear out the skip button before any conversation actually ended. Then, as I said before, this is not an open world game, but I thought it would have been nice if the ocean could have served as like your overworld map. Rather than having to fast travel to the surrounding waters of said location, it would have been nice if they could have merged all the surrounding waters into one zone. Maybe there were physical limitations as to why they couldn't do that, but I think it would have added a good bit of cohesion. And lastly, the question of value. This is a full-priced $60 game. And I know a lot of AAA titles have moved up to $70 now, but I still consider $60 to be in the realm of full price. And value is one of those things that is extremely subjective, so I can only share my point of view. As someone who very much enjoyed their time with the game, do I think it was worth $60? I do not. I mean, you have a pretty short linear campaign, and while it is padded out with a good bit of side content, I didn't feel like any of it was very impactful in the grand scheme of things. Like I said, I do think this is a good game, I just wanted a little more meat, a little more substance. And I have a sinking suspicion that may be why it did not sell very well, at least on Steam. I mean, all-time peak player count was just over 22,000, there's about 7,500 playing right now. Not great. Just from the perspective of a nobody who knows nothing, I think this game would have got a lot more action had it been priced at around maybe $40. In my own personal opinion, that would be a fair price for the experience. So my recommendation, probably wait for this game to go on sale, and if down the road at some point you're in the mood for some good goofy pirate fun, pick it up then. There is plenty of fun to be had.